Once upon a time, I was sitting across the table from a good friend of mine, a stepmom friend. We'll call her Veronica. And I was telling her how completely anxious I felt about this very public event I needed to attend. It was mandatory, that was going to pull me well outside of my comfort zone as a stepmom. And Victoria, I'll never forget, she looked across the table from me and she said very confidently, "Listen to me. This is what you're going to do." And then she proceeded to outline these steps that sounded nuts to me. She said, "You're going to go into your closet and you're going to find your most killer outfit. You're going to do a full beat of makeup, including a red lip. You're going to grab the best handbag you own." And I said, "Wait, I don't carry a handbag. That's not something I do." And she's like, "I know. That's the whole point." She went on to lay out a strategy that I thought sounded, frankly, kind of nuts. She was inviting me to imagine a version of a stepmom who would have no problem walking into this event. And even more than that, would welcome the opportunity to walk in like she owned the place and shine. I didn't realize it at the time, but what my brilliant friend was inviting me to do was to tap into the awesome power of the alter ego effect. So I'm back here today, all these years later, not a killer outfit, no handbag, certainly not a full beat, but I did wear the red lip in her honor. So thank you to Veronica, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. So when we talk about the power of the alter ego effect, here's what we're talking about. If you think about high performing athletes, celebrities, we see this a lot with recording artists, like musicians and singers. They often will, in interviews, refer to this persona that they take on that allows them to step into parts of themselves that they just don't have ready access to in their day-to-day lives. For whatever reason, they don't feel like their true self is up to the task of performing at that level. So Kobe Bryant had the Black Mamba, Beyonce, Sasha Fierce, David Bowie had Ziggy Stardust, Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem, had Slim Shady. And even outside of celebrities, real regular people are using the alter ego effect to their advantage in all kinds of different ways, from business to academics to all kinds of different relationships. We just don't hear them talk about it quite as much because they're not in the public eye. But the same ideas apply. So this concept was popularized by performance coach Todd Herman, although he didn't invent the idea of an alter ego. He just outlined a process and then packaged it up in a really insightful book. I'll link it for you below. Highly recommend. It's called The Alter Ego Effect. But for the purposes of this video, rather than summarize everything that he shares in that book, I really encourage you to check it out if you're interested, because he provides such a wide variety of case studies, high profile examples, as well as really interesting research findings that support the alter ego effect. But for this video, I want to briefly describe it to you, like what it even is and why we should care. Concentrate on why it's so particularly helpful for stepmoms, why I think stepmoms can benefit, as I have, from tapping into the alter ego effect. And finally, I want to give you a few practical steps you can take if you want to start testing this out in your real life, like ASAP. So that's the plan for today. Let's get into it. First up, I want to talk to you a bit about what we're talking about when we talk about the alter ego effect. So you might be thinking, what is this? Like, I have to pretend to be someone else? It might feel kind of silly. And if I'm honest, all those years ago when I sat across the table from my friend and I'm listening to her, it sounded bonkers to me, because I thought, yeah, if it was as easy as just becoming a different person, I would have already done that. But that's what's interesting, is that really in our day-to-day lives as adults, we seldom do test out different personas to our own advantage. More likely than not, we are trying to wrangle ourselves into adopting different habits, showing up in different ways just through sheer force, Or worse, we're berating ourselves for not possessing the kinds of qualities that we want. So let me put this into a practical picture for you in stepmom life. Maybe you are a stepmom who routinely is feeling like you are lacking the patience that you need to show up as you want to in this role. Maybe despite your best efforts, find yourself losing patience with members of your step family. Maybe you are speaking to them in ways that are harsher or just don't give them the kind of space that you would like to. Maybe you experience it more as a confidence issue. You're feeling highly insecure when you are going to interact with members of the other household, or you're going to step out into the world as a stepmom, and you can feel the criticism or the rejection. And that really gets to you and makes it hard for you to even navigate this role, let alone thrive in it. I can think of times, and I hear this all the time from stepmoms I work with, where the constant judgment and stigma surrounding the stepmom role itself can feel so cutting that it's like moving around in the world with a constant sunburn, where suddenly even something like a gentle breeze really stings. That's how it can feel when you're living in a constant state of insecurity and fear of judgment. Even neutral comments suddenly take on a new meaning because you are surveying the landscape for the next cutting remark that's going to come your way. It's no way to live. It's certainly not a joyful, easy way to live. So with the alter ego, what that enables you to do is temporarily embody a different version of yourself, one for whom the things that are challenging for you, as you know yourself, are no longer challenging. And that's my greatest tip for you in all of this, is that as you're thinking about the alter ego effect and how you can make it work for you in your real life, don't think about it as creating this alter ego who is better at different things, like more patient or more creative or more outgoing, or a big one I hear all the time, more secure and self-confident. A better way to think about it, a more useful way to think about it, is your alter ego is someone for whom all those things come easily. So they're not better at being patient than you are. Being patient comes easily to your alter ego, maybe. Being outgoing is a joy and is just as natural as breathing to your alter ego. Moving through the world confidently is so easy and effortless for your alter ego. That's the idea. So as you're thinking about how to connect the dots to your own life, I want you to keep that idea of ease in mind. It is as natural as can be for this alter ego that you're creating. The next thing to know about the alter ego is that it's not like as much a thought experiment. It's not something that's just living in your brain. It's something you're actually living out. I use that word embodying because it's like you are stepping into this real life costume of your alter ego. So even though it's important to start with the thought piece, you're cognitively asking yourself, okay, what might this person be like? How might they act? You ultimately are, and this is where the magic starts to happen, you are behaving as though you were that alter ego. That's the whole idea. Okay, so that's the overview. And again, highly recommend the book if you want to read through really specific examples of what it looks like, as well as summaries of what the research has to say about why this works, because it is very effective, as we'll get into. So I want to concentrate on 3 reasons it can be so especially helpful for stepmoms to experiment with the alter ego effect. Number 1, an alter ego creates psychological distance. So what do we mean by that? Well, so much of the time we are taught in our modern society that we are what we do. So whatever your career is, your marital status, relationship status, maybe your housing status, those become almost like part and parcel with your very identity. Suddenly it's indistinguishable what you do from who you are. The alter ego provides you a nice amount of distance, this helpful, healthy gap between who you are and how you like what actually matters to you and how people engage with you out in the world. We saw a version of this back when we were talking about cooking over on the Anxious Stepmom TikTok account. So go check that out. There's a whole playlist you can binge if you're interested in food and cooking for your step family and all the stuff that brings up. But we talked about how painful it can be and how intimidating it can be as a stepmom to take on or share in the task of preparing food for your stepkids. And so many stepmoms, including, interestingly, stepmoms who are employed, like their career is in the culinary world. Several professional chefs, stepmoms shared that they are still terrified sometimes by the fear of rejection of the food that they prepare by members of their stepfamily. So it's a big deal for many of us. But one of the things we talked about is that it can be really helpful to create some distance for yourself between who you are as a stepmom and the food that you are serving your family. Because you are not the food is not you, but it can feel sometimes, if you don't create that distance for yourself, it can feel like when your stepson rejects the broccoli, they are rejecting you as a person. And so that little bit of distance, once stepmoms are able to say, broccoli is broccoli. I didn't invent broccoli. I didn't give birth to this broccoli. I just put the broccoli on the plate. And so it's out of my hands now. If my stepchild doesn't care for broccoli, it doesn't mean they don't care for me. That was a real insight that a lot of stepmoms said was very valuable to them. I think that is, while that's not the alter ego effect necessarily, it speaks to that psychological distance that an alter ego can provide you. So as soon as you are able to give yourself that little bit of breathing room by stepping into an alter ego, many people find, lots of stepmoms who have tried this out, and I myself found, that fear and anxiety plummet because it doesn't feel like so much is on the line. You're not offering up your very essence for judgment. The second reason it can be so helpful for stepmoms is that an alter ego has been shown, and again, in the book, there's all kinds of fascinating research findings to support this idea. It improves performance. People as young as very small children, when they adopt temporarily an alter ego of someone who possesses certain traits and qualities that they aspire to, their performance increases to match that level of performance versus when they are just trying their best, even with very strong encouragement from parents, teachers, people around them. And we see this bear out with ourselves as adults as well. And adult populations. It's why sometimes even like the most earnest pep talk from someone that you care about falls flat. If you don't believe it, if you don't at your core believe that you are capable of X, Y, and Z, then someone just slamming you with a wall of words about how you are capable of it, it just doesn't hit. It doesn't land in a meaningful way with us. And so that's why it's so helpful to experiment with this alter ego idea. This has to do with what goes into lasting behavior change over time. So it doesn't just improve our performance in the moment when we adopt thoughtfully an alter ego, it actually promotes lasting change over time. That's because most of us, and this is a very Western ideal and approach to behavior change, we tend to take an outside in approach to changing our behaviors. So we might make a goal of, making some kind of change in the new year. And we just jump straight to forcing ourselves to make that change. But we haven't really made any kind of an internal shift because that's actually what we're hoping is the outcome of that behavioral change. If I can lose 10 pounds, then I will be a person who X, Y, and Z. And we pile on so many hopes and dreams attached to that really aren't directly connected to the behavior change because we're unlikely to make that change anyway, because we've just jumped ahead to the hard part. The reverse, however, is like a sneaky side door way to promote behavior change. And that is by acting as if, starting with the internal shift. Okay, who is someone, whatever that outcome was that you were hoping for at the end, create a version of that person and then pretend as though you already are that person. Because what the research tells us very clearly is that behavior follows when we make that internal shift. It's like the difference between, let's say that you're trying to cut back on alcohol. It's the difference between someone offering you a drink at an event and you saying, "Oh, thanks, I'm trying to cut down on drinking," versus saying, "Oh, no, thanks, I'm not really much of a drinker." Do you see the difference there? And even energetically, it sounds like a done deal. It sounds like a fact. And so if you are a person who's not really much of a drinker, then it not only becomes easier, more intuitive to refuse that drink, it becomes kind of inevitable, effortless even. Like, okay, why would I have a drink if I'm not really much of a drinker? Do you see the difference? I hope so. Let me know as you're listening to this. The third reason that the alter ego effect can be so, so powerful for stepmoms is that it promotes genuine personal development. So if we think about kind of the short term and the long term, so back to me and my event, my friend was trying to get me to think about what it would look like to show up as this more secure, confident version of myself for like 24 hours. She was like, "You don't have to do this forever. Just try to be her tonight, like after we leave this coffee shop, when you're going home, preparing what you're going to wear for the next day, as you're getting ready for bed, as you're going to bed, waking up in the morning, as you're getting to the event, and certainly as you're at the event. Like that's the big thing that this is all working towards." She's like, "It's not forever. It's just 24 hours. You could be anyone for 24 hours." So that's the short term. But long term, what we see is that as long as you're choosing alter egos who are aligned with who you are as a person, so they're not a completely different version of you, they still share your same core values and ideals. They just, back to that word ease, they have an easier time showing up in all of these different characteristics that for whatever reason are hard for you right now. So over time, as long as you're choosing alter egos who share your same core values, you are going to naturally, if you consistently try out these different alter egos, or even just one, over time, many people are surprised to find they just sort of wake up one day and realize they have taken on those very characteristics and qualities that seemed so outside of their grasp when they first started with the alter ego. And that is because you're doing the dang thing. By seeing that I'm already someone who X, Y, and Z, it becomes easier for you to integrate those characteristics. And you get a lot of feedback from other people who start to see you that way. Marilyn Monroe is another great example. She was an alter ego created by the real human who embodied her. And there are some really interesting accounts from friends and people close to her who have recalled now after her death that it was something that she could switch on and off like a light. Like even when she was in full Marilyn look, there was something about her essence that she could switch on and switch off. And there's some really interesting examples of how she'd be out in public and people wouldn't even know it was her. And then she would say to a friend, "Do you want me to turn her on? Or do you want me to become her?" Meaning Marilyn Monroe. And something inside of her would shift and suddenly people were swarming her. That's the power of the alter ego effect. So one of the reasons why it becomes like, I want to make this distinction because one of the questions I got when I shared about this initially over on TikTok and then later Instagram were a couple of people saying that just feels hard to pretend to be someone else. And I really want to drive this point home. You're not pretending to be someone else. You are stepping into this alternate version of yourself. And so if you're sitting here thinking, "Yeah, but the characteristics I'm trying to embody, like I'm not at all a patient person and I'm trying to be a very patient person," what I would say to that is you can think of yourself as a diamond, a beautiful, rare diamond with all of these different facets, right? And one of those facets maybe is your lack of patience, like your need to just kind of get on to the next thing. And for whatever reason, that facet has become synonymous for you with who you are as a person. And so if you identify day in and day out for, in many cases, your whole life as someone who just can't sit still for 5 seconds or gets really impatient with people when they take too long, and that likely has been reinforced maybe by your family of origin or coworkers or past partners, then it's easy to start to see that as like a defining characteristic, just who you are, when in reality, it's one facet of you. You have many other facets, including the ability to be completely unhurried when you want to be. And if you stop and think about it, I'm sure you can imagine those of you who are saying, yeah, that's me, I struggle with impatience. Think of a time when it hasn't been hard at all for you to be patient. Probably it's when you were in a really relaxed state, doing something enjoyable. Maybe you felt like you had checked off certain boxes. That too is the real you. You just have given priority to the one facet that is a challenge for you. And he talks about it in the book, there's an evolutionary component to this. We are kind of hardwired to place extra emphasis and focus on the areas of challenge for us. That's why it's probably very easy for you to identify as an insecure person or, any of the kind of challenging parts of your personality. That's probably what you are focusing on, the deficits rather than the strengths. But all of the facets are equal, meaning they're all up for grabs. At any point, you can kind of shift the diamond of your personality to let the light shine on whatever facet you want. That's all the alter ego is. And so I really want you to see, like, it's all you. It's just a matter of stepping into it and trying it on as though it's somebody else until it starts to feel more comfortable for you. So if this is something that you're interested in, if it's something that you want to test out for yourself, I'm going to give you a few practical steps that you can go through to kind of put this into practice, take it from like an abstract idea into something you can actually use. The first is just to do an honest assessment. Where are the areas of your life where you're feeling like you're struggling? What are the challenges for you? I've already named a few. Just think about, and this, by the way, applies to all different areas of your life. I hope you can see this. But for the sake of this video, I want you to think about where in your role as a stepmom has it been really challenging for you? What are the qualities and traits and characteristics that you've said to yourself, like, "Oh, why can't you just be more?" Or I wish it was easier for me to be more. And I want you to focus on not the behavior of other people, keep it on what you could control. So maybe it's your response to someone else. Maybe you wish you weren't so sensitive. Like if something from the other household gets back to you, or one of your stepkids said something to you or your partner, and it just feels like you can't shake it off no matter how hard you try. Put into the words what you wish you could do instead. Maybe it's to be unbothered. That's always kind of a trending term whenever we talk about this on social media, and for good reason. I think people, stepmoms the world over, recognize that unbothered doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not so attached to things outside your control. And, who wouldn't want to aspire to that? So think about what is important to you. And then I want you to start to create the type of person for whom those qualities are as natural as breathing. So you might use, it might be kind of like a mashup of people that you know in real life or public figures, that kind of a thing. It even could be culled from snapshots of yourself at your best over the years. Maybe there was a time where you were able to be just really impervious to something nasty that someone else said. You might kind of integrate that in. But over time, you're sketching it out as a full character. Sometimes people find it helpful to give their alter ego a name. Sometimes people find it helpful to imagine like a little bit of a backstory or origin story, almost like a Marvel character or something. How did they get to be the way that they are? And again, that person at their core, that alter ego, shares all of your same core values and principles. So that's important to remember. But They are just unnatural at things that right now are hard for you. You can also create multiple different alter egos. So maybe you create one who is really nurturing and slow and warm and welcoming and inviting. During times when you find that just really hard to be, you can lean into that alter ego. Maybe there's one who is able to show up a certain way in your relationship. And by the way, that is one area where many stepmoms told me over on TikTok that you're already kind of comfortable doing this, right? If you really reflect on the relationship with your partner, there probably are different flavors of yourself that you lean into with your partner under certain circumstances, you know? So that's kind of the idea here. You're just doing it in different settings and under different circumstances. So once you've visualized their name, their backstory, how they carry themselves, then it's time to practice stepping into your alter ego. So that's where you can use a physical cue. Maybe it is a pair of glasses. Maybe it's styling your hair a certain way. Maybe it's a bold lip. Maybe it's an actual physical carriage, like a certain posture or a tone of voice or a way that you carry yourself physically through the space. Whatever it is, I want you to kind of make a mental note of it, or even like a little list in a note on your phone, so that when you want to start switching into that alter ego, you've got everything you need, almost like a little recipe of how to help get yourself in that state. I worked with one stepmom who created a playlist, like an actual Spotify playlist for each of her alter egos. She didn't have a ton, there were just a few. And what she found over time, and many people do find this, is that some alter egos might be with you for the long haul. Like you always are going to need to tap into that one when times get tough. Other alter egos are just kind of with you for a season of your stepmom life, and then you can just let them go. You just find you don't need them anymore. And usually that's because the circumstances in your life have changed, or more likely, you have started to integrate those qualities of that alter ego with your true self over time, which is the whole goal and a really beautiful thing. All right, I would love to know how all of this is landing with you. If you have questions about this, please drop them below. If you're watching on the replay, I want to know which part of this is standing out to you most and resonating. If you have any questions at all, drop them there. Check out the description box as always for resources, including a link to The Alter Ego Effect, the book that I recommended. And I can't wait to hear how this is going for you. See you next time.